Thanks for listening. If you like the candid discussion and are seeking the truth behind the mainstream narrative, then please subscribe and share. Not only am I grateful, but those who seek the truth and wish to empower themselves and their family's health, freedoms, and future will also be grateful. Hey everybody, today I got my really good friend and mentor, Morley Robbins. And I'm excited to have Morley on today. Many of you have seen his mug with me before, so this seems like old hat, but it's never an old conversation. Morley just wrote this book, and I'm here to help him get the word out because this book is awesome. It's very explanatory, and Morley's got a great way of communicating the simplicity. So thanks for being here with us today, buddy.
Absolutely. It's a conversation that's long overdue. We both got distracted this year, and looking forward to our repartee. And appreciate your willingness to do this.
You got distracted writing, and teaching, and yeah, you were busy doing that, and I was sadly giving health freedom talks for people to remember their rights. But that said, there's some really cool foundational things that the root cause protocol is exposing in terms of what people can do on their own to regain their energy. Number one is what I love you're approaching. So can you talk a little bit about, just a kind of a brief start into the magnesium discovery. So actually, let's go back one step further before the magnesium discovery, and then how you came upon it, which then led to this next couple pieces.
Sort of the thumbnail sketch of how did Morley morph into what he is now?
Yes.
Okay.
To put this big picture together over almost 11 years of doing research, 2 to 3 hours a day.
Yeah. It's actually looking back at, our lives make sense when we look in reverse, right? But when we're going through it, it's like, oh my God, what's why am I doing this? What's happening? But again, onion school theory of development. A guy in college wants to major in biology, wants to be a doctor, and he doesn't have the it wasn't an issue of intellect. He didn't have the willingness to follow the party line. I was a free thinker then. I'm a free thinker now. And so in the classic sense, I didn't do well in college. And so therefore I wasn't an attractive candidate for the system. Thank God. As Ben Edwards says, it's a blessing you didn't get indoctrinated. So if you don't go to medical school, you go to business school to become an administrator and boss the doctors around. That's the natural order of things. And I followed suit and did that for 32 years. I was a hospital executive. I was never the CEO of a hospital. I wouldn't want that responsibility, but I was always reporting to the CEO and involved in the growth and development of the system and the organization. But did that for 12, and then for 20 years was a consultant, helping clients get bigger and better and supposedly better, and was pulling a suitcase behind my body for 20 years. And then I developed what's called frozen shoulder. My body said, we're done with that. You're not going to do that. I couldn't lift my hand above my waist. And so I was recommended by a group of people that I had come to trust at a health food store. They told me to go see Dr. Liz. Well, I did this, because you guys, you chiropractors are a bunch of witch doctors. And I knew that at the time. And so I said, no, thanks. I'll just give me some supplements. Well, that didn't work, of course. And then months later, I go back and the owner looks me in the eye and says, Morley, we love you. Go see Dr. Liz. So with my tail between my legs, I went to see Dr. Liz, and it was a life-changing experience. And she healed my frozen shoulder. I suddenly was able to lift my arm up after 2 sessions. What will surprise the listeners who haven't heard this story is that she actually released the pressure in the pterygoids.
Pterygoids, yeah.
Pterygoids?
Starts with a P, pterygoid.
Okay, so she put pressure there, and I mean pressure. It was like a jackhammer but she was trying to match the resistance that was in this joint that's from clenching your teeth because you hate what you're doing. I mean, but she used this phrase, innate healer. And I looked at her, I didn't say anything. I was like, innate healer. I'm thinking, I've just spent 32 years dancing with doctors. Why do we have all these doctors if there's an innate healer? So I set out to find who is this innate healer? What are they? What is it? What's its composition? And where do we find that dude? You know? And so it's only taken 11 years, but I can honestly say I know who the innate healer is, and it's bioavailable copper, and it's different expressions of it. There are hundreds of copper enzymes. There's a protein that we've talked about on many programs, Wade, about ceruloplasmin. And again, the audience needs to say that word, ceruloplasmin. It's a very special protein in our body that it's just magical in what it can do. And what's fascinating is that only 1% of the copper in the body is in the blood. That's not a lot.
Mm-hmm.
And so ceruloplasmin, and what they'll say is that 95% of the copper in the blood is in ceruloplasmin. So then you think, wow, ceruloplasm is like, that's where it's at. Ceruloplasm is only a small percentage of the copper enzymes, but it's a big ass representation of bioavailable copper. So that was a big discovery. And then there's an enzyme. I think it's the most important enzyme on the planet. It's the enzyme in our mitochondria. So we have 100 trillion cells. Some would say it's as low as 38 trillion, but a lot of consensus around 100 trillion. It's an easier number. We can think of 100. We're 38.2 trillion, that's just being obnoxious, right? So 100 trillion.
I think that's a quarter of M1, isn't it?
Yeah, exactly. Touche. And so then we've got supposedly 40 quadrillion mitochondria. Well, that's like 400 per cell. Then all we got to do is go back to our high school textbook, biology textbook, and there were like one or maybe two mitochondria in the picture. So we've been grossly misled and misfed from day one, and it's a grid. The mitochondria are a grid inside the cell, and it's just this lattice work of these organelles that are communicating. That's where the real intelligence of the cell is. It's not good Lord, the nucleus. Are you kidding? The nucleus is a Xerox machine in the corner, and what happens if you unplug the Xerox machine? It doesn't work. Oh, so maybe the nucleus is dependent on energy? Now it's beginning to make more sense, right? And so this lattice work it's connected with the endoplasmic reticulum. It's connected with lysosomes. It's like, oh my God, it's so amazingly interwoven. But we're taught there's two mitochondria, and there's a nucleus. The nucleus is always this big, and the mitochondria, these little tiny specks. It's like, no. So
what you're saying, Morley, is that even the depiction, the artwork with which we've been told what cellular structures are, what a cell contains, how they look, how they appear, this anatomical presentation of what it is, or structural presentation, has been askew.
Absolutely askew, and it's all been developed at Disney University. Walt Disney, as a joke, that's how real it is. The whole thing is a cartoon.
Okay. So with that said, why would that be? Because this is where people have a hard time breaking through an old vision of what a cell is from their basic biology class into now hearing that, wait, that was wrong. So what would be the purpose, Morley, of depicting a Disney version of a cell versus reality?
Because they're just having fun with us. I mean, we're just chattel to the people at the top. I mean, we can use that model. They're just having fun with us. We can use the economic model. They make more money when we're stupid, or we can go dark and say, oh, it's demonic, and they're just evil people. And it's like, depending upon what channel you want to play, it's all the same. It's a spectrum dynamic, I think. The fact of the matter is, there are scientists who know the truth. They have published the truth, but it's been buried.
Yes. Okay.
And you can find it. It's if you are persistent, if you are curious, got to spell the word right, CU. So you see the copper, but you got to be curious about it. But the thing, let me just finish my thought on the enzyme. The enzyme, the most important enzyme on planet Earth, because we live on a planet with two poisons, oxygen and iron. Oxygen and iron are poisons. What happens when they're mixed together? They turn to rust. And we know what a rusty nail looks like, and a rusty pipe, and a rusty car. Well, that rusting process happens within. And what is aging? Oh, it's rust. Oh my gosh, it's that simple, right? Mm-hmm. And so the most important enzyme, cytochrome C oxidase, CCO, and it's what turns oxygen into water. The mitochondria are water wheels. They're constantly making water. And when they can make water at complex 4 and send and by the very act of making water, guess what water is? It has a neutral pH of 7. So the cytochrome C oxidase works in a neutral pH, just like it's supposed to. And when that happens, ADP can become ATP at complex 5. That's a big deal. And so, and you can't, go ahead.
Let's just clarify for listeners too. Complex 4 that Morley's referring to in complex 5 is the production in Krebs with producing energy by the mitochondria. So these are stages of where the physiologic exchange and the outcomes. We want water as clean exhaust versus hydroxyl, which is, he'll get into this, but I just want to make sure we didn't lose him with your jargon, which is awesome. So
I am so stealing that phrase you just used. We want water as clean exhaust. God love you, man. That's a beautiful, beautiful way to describe it. I've never thought of it that way.
I do love you, brother.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And so we just decided to reincarnate in this lifetime to have this conversation. It's taken us years to get to this point, but that's beautiful. Clean exhaust. So when we have clean exhaust, ADP can become ATP. What do you
energy?
Energy. That's the energy molecule. But here's the fascinating part. These little organelles, these little energy centers, these little power plants, they need to do 3 things. They need to ensure that we actually store energy in the membrane. It's called voltage. And the mitochondrial membrane and the cellular membrane need to hold voltage. It's very, very important. The second thing that needs to happen is we've got to store energy in ATP. Those adenosine triphosphate, those phosphates are little bursts of energy. When they get cleaved off, boom, there's a little burst of energy that the cell is able to use. Very, very important.
When it comes to infrared sauna, the technology at therasage360.com is on the forefront of delivering results safely and effectively. The technology in Therasage 360 is not only affordable and portable, it allows you to access the benefits of infrared technology on any budget. For a 15% discount on all products on therasage360.com, use code FSDW360. You'll be glad you did.
So those are the two ways to store energy in the cell. And then the mitochondria have got to be able to maintain that charge. It's very, very important. So it's a very critical function. Well, guess what color complex 4 is? Complex 4 is blue. It's like, oh, guess what color ceruloplasmin is? Oh, it's blue. Oh, guess what one of the most important parts of the brain center are? It's called the locus coeruleus. It's about the size of your thumbnail. It's got about 50,000 neurons in it. And it's like, if you were to drill deep into the brainstem, it's before you actually get into the brain itself. What color is it? Locus Ceruleus is
Blue.
Latin for blue dot, blue spot.
Hmm.
It's literally the color blue. And what's its job? To produce noradrenaline to stop inflammation in the brain. And it innervates all the way to the front of the brain, and it goes all the way through the central nervous system. Here's where it gets fascinating. There's something called the vagus nerve. Chiropractor.
Say hi to Dr. Liz for us. She's making breakfast.
Yeah, she's cleaning up after breakfast, absolutely. Using cast iron pans, I might say. But the vagus.
So, go ahead. Yeah, sorry. No, the interruption there. With the blue dot, when you said, okay, so we're visualizing a conglomeration of copper-rich material cells, right. Okay, right. And so you said it's more of a transfer point, or that's what I was taking in from that.
The thing is, the three highest copper centers of the brain, of actual brain tissue, are substantia nigra, the hippocampus, and what's called the corpus callosum. That's actually where ceruloplasmin actually gets made. Think copper might be important there? Yeah, probably. And so the locus ceruleus, and I know I'm throwing out a lot of terms for people, but this is just to get people to realize the narrative that you've been taught is from Walt Disney. It's not real. It's not how the body really works. But the locus ceruleus has 10 times more copper than any of those brain centers. 10 times more copper. And why is this important? This brain center, locus ceruleus, was discovered in 1808. That's a long time ago. When did they start really understanding its purpose? 2017. 200 years of silence. Someone's been studying it. But they started to go public with the message. And when the locus ceruleus burns out from lack of copper, right? What feeds the locus ceruleus? Ceruloplasmin in the central nervous system. But when it burns out, you get schizophrenia, depression, anxiety. All the behavioral disorders flow from a broken locus ceruleus. What happens on the other side? Oh, all neurodegeneration. Oh, let's go down the laundry list. You've heard of Alzheimer's, ALS, Friedreich's ataxia, Huntington's disease, multiple sclerosis, Parkinson's. All of it, both sides, are connected to a dysfunctional locus ceruleus. It's not being fed by the blue protein, and so the blue dot gets bleached. What's a really easy form of bleach? We used to use it when we were younger. It's called hydrogen peroxide. Spray your hair, make it turn white or blonde, right?
Dirty exhaust.
Dirty exhaust. There you go. I like that. So we got clean exhaust, dirty exhaust. And so if you don't have copper enzymes, the dirty exhaust takes over. And so this blue protein, the vagus nerve, ends its journey, because what people may not know is that 80% of the nerve direction of the vagus it ends in the locus ceruleus. It's called the watchtower. Do we have a problem? Oh, we have a problem in the liver? Oh, we have a problem where? It's like, I think chiropractors should be all over that. You guys you're the nerve technicians, the nerve specialists on the planet, because you understand nerves better than anybody else I know. That's been my experience with Dr. Liz and her colleagues. And the whole thing, it's amazing. And then there's this protein called AMPK, AMP kinase. And what is that? It's the drumbeat of metabolism. Where does it hang out? Well, it hangs out on the mitochondria. Every mitochondria has AMPK, saying it's an energy sensor. Oh, actually, what it really is, it's a fat sensor. Do we have enough fat in order to burn to create enough energy? And so there's this really elegant system built around copper that nobody knows about, because it would kill the narrative. here's an example. For whatever reason, I'm inspired by amazing dead scientists. People like Otto Warburg or Albert Szent-Györgyi. These are just luminaries in this field. A name that people have never heard of, David Kylan. He was just an absolute genius. But there's another physician. His name was Paul Ehrlich. Paul Ehrlich was a German physician, got his MD degree in 1886. And as a medical student, think about this, the medical student, he's experimenting with something called methylene blue. And for the listeners, methylene blue is kind of like copper polish. In the same way we use silver polish to brighten up our silverware, well, methylene blue polishes up copper.
Mm. And
so he's using it to study cellular structure as a medical student. This guy's really curious, right? And in 1892, he uses methylene blue to cure malaria. He applies it to 2 patients, and malaria is gone, literally like that. Well, where methylene blue was invented was at a company called BASF. It's a behemoth biochemical company now. It's part of the big pharma infrastructure. And when they caught wind of what Ehrlich had done, they said, "That's great that you cured malaria. That's really good. We're gonna make it better. You know, build back better, right? So we're gonna make it better." And they turned methylene blue into hydroxychloroquine. And now this is back in 1892. Put on your time machine. And so now when people get malaria, and I've read many articles about it, they're treated for life with hydroxychloroquine. But in 1892, they were cured by methylene blue. And that's where we live in today. And it's all about treatment, because it was actually 100 years later. So we go from 1892, we're curing malaria. 1992, during the Clinton administration, what 4-letter word was banned by the FDA? Hold up the book again. Hold up my book again.
What banned? Yeah, what word was banned? The word cure.
Cure. You're technically not allowed to use that word. I had a colleague who has a legal background say, "Sure you want to use that word?" I said, "Yeah, I can't wait."
You broke it up beautifully. I love the ingenuity behind that.
And again, what people need to understand is that the copper is the cure, and that's the play on words.
Folks, just to remind you, just as you can see this, it is the copper as the element. It's brilliant regarding fatigue and obviously your energy depletion. So how balancing 3 minerals and 1 protein is a solution that you're looking for. Morley M. Robbins, my man.
Yeah. So, and again, it's just the catchphrase I use now is, let's ignore the enemies and let's ignite the energy. That's what the whole paradigm is about, making energy. Because when you make energy, guess what happens to the pathogens? They disappear. Yeah, that's one of the most important things I learned from Jerry Tennant, is that the pH can be expressed from 1 to 14. Everybody knows that. 7's in the middle. But if you overlay energy expression, it's a bell-shaped curve. And energy production is highest when we're making clean exhaust, water. And what's the pH of water? 7.0. And so when the energy drops off, either you're making too much acid or you're taking too much base or alkaline, the energy production is dropping off, and that's when the pathogens wake up. They thrive in a low energy environment. Well, that's good to know. And what we've been trained to think is we have to kill those pathogens, those enemies. And I'm saying, no, you don't. Let's feed the energy cycle.
Okay, my fellow health warriors, it's time to head over to iTunes, franklyspeakingdrwade.com. There, you can rate, review, and subscribe, as well as share, so more of our brothers and sisters can grow to realize their voice and their health freedom. Speaking up means you matter, so get on it. This podcast is for information purposes only. The statements or views expressed are not medical advice and are not meant to replace the advice of your medical doctor. This podcast, including Dr. Wade Anenson and his guests, disclaim responsibility for any adverse effects you may experience from the specific use of information contained herein. Opinions of guests are their own, and this podcast does not endorse and accept responsibility for statements made by guests. This podcast does not make any representations or warranties about the guest qualifications or credibility. This podcast may contain paid endorsements and advertisements for such services or products. Individuals on this podcast may have direct or indirect financial interest in products or services referred to herein. If you think you have a medical condition, consult your licensed physician.